Alright, so I want to talk about a little something called politics. Now, the thing about democracy is that democracy requires people to participate. People have to actually pay attention to who they're voting for. People have to pay attention to what they vote, like what their representative, because we have representative democracy, we don't have an actual democracy, so people need to know what their representatives actually vote on the specific issues, or else they have no idea what their representative is going to do. And that's the thing, you have to have a public that's actively engaged in politics for a republic democracy to truly represent the people. And the thing is, people don't pay attention to politics. They don't. They don't pay enough attention to politics. They don't really care because they think it's all corrupt anyways. That's what most people think. So they don't want to even try to pay attention. That's why a lot of people think they shouldn't even vote, because they think voting is pointless, because they think the whole system is corrupt. Blah 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 blah. Well, what influences people's votes right now? Let's say that, let's say the votes aren't rigged and that it's actually real. I have no idea. But let's say, what influences people's votes right now? It's name recognition. It's how well they get their name out to the public. Which, in other words, how many commercials they have, how many signs they put up around the area, etc., etc. They have to have name recognition. They have to have people see their name and then they vote for them because they recognize that politician. I'll go here. I wasn't fast enough off the draw. Here I go. The thing about that is, all it has to do is money. It's just money. It's how much money you can put into commercials, etc., etc. Because there's no public forum to get your voice heard. The only way you can get your voice heard is if you're in a debate. That's the only way that everyone is represented. That's the only place that everyone is represented, is in debates. So, and ever since the ruling that money equals free speech and corporations are people, that gives corporations the right to spend as much money as they want on politics, well, that pretty much means that whoever the corporations spend the most money on is going to have their name heard the most. And then that person's going to get voted in regardless of what they think. So if you want to fit, that creates a system of corruption. By having money influence elections, you are creating a system of corruption that is inevitable. It is impossible not to have corruption when anyone can spend money on their politicians, and it all matters on name recognition because the public doesn't pay attention to politics. So, the only way to make it an actual fair election in which the votes are not influenced by who's given the most money to put their name out is to have publicly funded elections in which the government pays for, through taxes, pays for all political campaign for every candidate. So that means every candidate has to pay a certain amount just to become a candidate. That's understandable because you don't want anybody just running for a candidacy. But they can't receive donations from anyone. I mean, like individuals, random people. They can't receive money because that would be considered a bribe. So I hear a lot of talk about campaign finance reform. Campaign finance reform. I've heard Cenk Uygur talk about that. And, I don't like that word. You know why I don't like the word campaign finance reform? But not the word, the phrase campaign finance reform? Because it doesn't get across the point of what needs to be done. It's not reform, It's a complete overhaul of the campaign system. They need to set up a literal campaign bureau, a bureau of campaigning, or whatever you want to call it, so that, that's devoted to equal campaign ads for every single politician. That's the only way to do it. You can't reform the financing and say, you can only spend this much money on politicians, or can't, corporations can't spend money on politicians, but individuals can, etc. So you can't do that. That doesn't work. That doesn't do what we're trying to get across. You need to take money out of the equation completely. You cannot have money influencing elections. It's just, if you really wanted to make a republic democracy work like it should, you wouldn't even have to worry about money, because you would just have people pay attention to politics, and people would actually know who they're voting for, and they would vote for the person that they want, because they would actually read what their opinions on specific issues are. Not just their opinions, but what they've actually voted on. If they've already been a politician for a while, I want to know what they've actually voted on. And there are places you could do that, but it's not very easy to find them. In fact, I haven't found any. I think I remember seeing on YouTube, they've pointed to one senator, Bernie Sanders or something, who actually has up on his site every single thing he's voted for. I'm pretty sure you could do that. I'm pretty sure most politicians do that on their individual sites. Most politicians probably have a list of all the things they've voted on and how they voted on it. I'm sure through the government you could probably find that out as well. But it's not very accessible. It's not very easy to find, from what I understand. So, the only way you could really fix it, if you want to let's say people are not going to just automatically start paying attention to politics more. That's not going to happen. Maybe give it a couple hundred years and people might start paying attention more. They might start paying attention less. So, given that, the only way to make it an equal chance, given that people aren't going to actually pay attention, is to have equal representation of their politicians in the campaigns, meaning TV commercials, advertisements, etc., meaning every candidate needs exact equal amount of money, and they can spend that money how they want, etc., etc., but they all need an equal amount of money. They can't have an unequal amount, because that would mess up the elections. In fact, the Electoral College is there to say that if the voters are influenced in some way that changes the outset of elections, that they can be changed through the Electoral College, that the votes can be just, we'll give more votes to this one person because we think he was inadvertently, his votes are affected in some way. And if you ask me, every single election where one candidate has more commercials or more money spent than the other candidate is influencing the election in one way or another, in a way that's not fair, in a way that gives one candidate an advantage over the other candidate, regardless of their position on matters or what the people actually want in a candidate. So I would say that the Electoral College has not been doing their job. They should have made an issue out of this a long time ago, because that is influencing the votes, that is impacting how people vote, because the one person they hear a lot more about than another person. For example, I haven't heard anything about Ron Paul lately at all. He made a big deal when he first. I was hearing a lot about him when he first came out, and since then, every single news agency, every single person out there has been just completely ignoring him. They don't even mention him. They don't even mention his name as a candidate when they're talking about the people that want to be voted on. So it's just bullshit. That's all I'm saying. Just bullshit. The only issue people seem to have with publicly funded elections is how would you finance it? How would you cover the costs? Well, first of all, I think if you had publicly funded elections, there would be lower costs to elections. I don't think people would be spending billions of dollars on their campaigns, I think it would be a lot lower. Because, you know, from what I understand, in certain, I don't know if this is how it is in the presidential election, but in certain elections, if there's like a given amount on how much you're supposed to spend in your campaign, like they're like, if you know, like, we would recommend that everybody spends around this amount. But if you spend more than your, then you're not, then your name won't be, then like that little blurb that they give about your opinions and stuff, it won't appear, it'll just appear blank. So, I mean, that I understand, like, the reasoning behind that. They're like, if you spend more than you're supposed to, you don't get that little extra blurb about your opinion, so that the people that literally didn't pay attention to politics won't know exactly what your opinions are. But, you know, if anything, I think that makes it worse, because it means that they can spend all this money, get their name to be recognized, and then, you know, all they have to do is get their name out there. They don't have to get their opinions out at all. And then when the people that didn't pay attention, they just see this person has a name that they recognize. Oh my God, fucking go, dude. But, yeah. Like, I really don't think that helps at all. Like, I really think that everybody should be required to put a blurb about them, regardless about how much they spend on their campaign or whatever like that, you know? It just doesn't make sense. Because then that person, they'll have their name out there, but people won't even know what they're voting for. It's not a good way to do it. And I really feel like until this system of elections gets fixed, our country is not going to get better in any way. It's just going to keep getting worse. People are just bought and paid for. They're not representing the people. They're representing who gives them the most money. It's just ridiculous.